Let me say this slowly, because someone needs to hear it today. Staying home is not quitting on life. It's choosing yourself. We live in a world that worships busy, glorifies exhaustion, and shames stillness. And if you're not constantly out there, proving something, showing up somewhere, being seen, people assume something is wrong with you. But listen to me, nothing is wrong with you. Something is right. When you stay home, you step out of the noise that tells you who you should be. You stop performing. You stop managing impressions. You stop carrying the emotional weight of rooms that never truly held you. Staying home is where you finally get honest. Honest about what drains you, what scares you, and what you've been running from by staying busy. I've spent years studying shame, and here's what I know we run because we're afraid of stillness. Stillness asks questions. Stillness tells the truth. When you stay home, you're not hiding, you're listening. You're listening to the part of you that's tired of pretending everything is fine. You're listening to your nervous system begging for safety, not stimulation. And let me be clear, staying home isn't about isolation. It's about intentional withdrawal. It's about choosing peace over pressure, depth over noise, meaning over motion. The bravest thing you can sometimes do is cancel the plan, lock the door, sit with yourself, and say, I'm allowed to rest. I'm allowed to reset. I'm allowed to come home to myself. This is not weakness. This is courage in its quietest form. Staying home is where you begin to recover what the world slowly takes from you, your nervous system, your clarity, your sense of enough. Out there, you're constantly absorbing other people's expectations, moods, judgments, and unspoken demands. Every conversation asks you to adjust. Every room asks you to shrink or perform. And over time, that cost adds up in ways you don't notice until you're exhausted and don't know why. When you stay home, your body finally exhales, your shoulders drop, your breath deepens, your thoughts slow down enough for you to hear them. And what you often discover is this: you weren't tired because you were doing too much. You were tired because you were doing too much for everyone else. Staying home removes the audience. And without an audience, you don't have to explain, impress, or justify who you are. This is where boundaries are born. Not the loud, dramatic kind, the quiet kind that say, I don't owe my energy to anyone who drains me. Staying home teaches you discernment. It shows you which relationships thrive in silence and which ones collapse without constant access to you. And that information, it's priceless. We talk about self-care like it's bubble baths and candles. But real self-care is disappointing people so you don't abandon yourself. It's choosing solitude over resentment. It's recognizing that every time you say yes when you mean no, your body keeps the score. Staying home is where you stop negotiating your worth. You remember that you don't have to earn rest. You don't have to justify space. You don't have to be available to be valuable. In the quiet, you begin to rebuild trust with yourself, and that trust becomes the foundation for everything that comes next. Staying home also reveals something uncomfortable, but deeply important: who you are when no one is watching, without plans, without noise, without the pressure to be interesting or productive. You come face to face with yourself. And for many people, that's terrifying, because stillness doesn't distract, it reflects. This is where old feelings rise, the grief you postponed, the anger you swallowed, the loneliness you masked with constant movement. And here's the truth we avoid-y: you can't heal what you won't sit with. Staying home gives you the space to feel without performing strength, to cry without explaining, to be quiet without being questioned. I've learned that business is one of the most socially acceptable ways to avoid emotional pain. We fill our calendars so we don't have to fill the silence. But silence isn't empty, it's honest, and honesty is the doorway to wholeness. When you stay home, you stop outsourcing your sense of belonging. You stop chasing validation in rooms that don't truly see you. This is also where creativity returns. Insight, intuition, the soft voice inside you that knows when something is off or when something is finally right. Staying home sharpens that voice because it's no longer competing with the world's noise. You start trusting yourself again, not because someone else approved, but because you listened, and slowly something shifts. You realize that peace doesn't come from doing more. It comes from needing less. Less approval, less explanation, less external proof that you matter. Staying home teaches you that you were never empty. You were just overextended. Staying home changes how you see connection. You begin to notice how often togetherness felt like obligation, how many conversations required you to edit yourself just to be accepted. Out there, connection is loud. It's performative. It's measured by presence, not depth. But at home, connection becomes honest because it starts with you. When you stay home, you stop confusing proximity with intimacy. You realize that being surrounded by people doesn't protect you from loneliness. Being unseen does. Staying home teaches you that real connection doesn't drain you. It steadies you. And anything that leaves you exhausted, anxious, or smaller afterward was never closeness. It was endurance. This is where you learn to stop chasing people who only value access to you, not the truth of you. When you step back, some people disappear, and that hurts. But listen to me carefully. What disappears when you set boundaries was never meant to stay. Staying home reveals who respects your limits and who resents them. There is grief in this awareness. Grief for the relationships you hope would grow deeper. Grief for the versions of yourself that kept showing up, hoping to be chosen. But grief is not a failure. It's a signal of growth. It means you're no longer willing to betray yourself for connection. Staying home recalibrates your definition of belonging. It teaches you that you don't belong where you must constantly explain yourself. You belong where you can be quiet and still be understood. And until then, your home becomes the safest place to practice that truth. Staying home is where you begin to untangle your identity from productivity. Out there, worth is measured by output. Visibility, momentum. If you're not achieving, advancing, or announcing something, the world quietly asks, what are you doing with your life? And over time, that question becomes internal. You start interrogating your rest. You start feeling guilty for slowing down. But staying home interrupts that lie. It reminds you that you are not a machine designed for constant performance. You are a human being designed for rhythms, effort and rest, engagement and withdrawal. When you stay home, you give yourself permission to exist without proving anything. This is where burnout begins to loosen its grip. Because burnout isn't just exhaustion, it's the erosion of meaning. It's what happens when you give and give without replenishment. Staying home is an act of replenishment. It's choosing sustainability over applause. You also start noticing how much of your life was driven by fear of falling behind, fear of missing out, fear of being forgotten. But here's the paradox. The more you slow down, the more present you become. You stop racing toward a life you're supposed to want and start listening for the life that actually fits. Staying home helps you redefine success. Success becomes clarity, alignment, peace, the ability to say no without a knot in your stomach, the ability to rest without shame. And slowly, you realize that the most meaningful work you will ever do is not out there. It's the quiet, unseen work of becoming whole. Staying home is also where your nervous system relearns safety. So many of us live in a constant state of alert, scanning rooms, managing reactions, bracing for judgment. We call it being high functioning, but what it really is chronic stress wearing a polite face. When you stay home, the threat level drops. Your body finally understands that it doesn't have to be on guard. This is important because healing does not happen in chaos. Growth does not happen while you're bracing. Staying home gives your system the message it's been waiting for. You are safe enough to soften. And when you soften, your emotions stop screaming just to be heard. You begin to notice how often you were overriding your own needs to keep the peace. How often you smiled while your body tensed. Staying home removes the pressure to self-abandon. It gives you a chance to honor what you actually feel, not what's convenient for others. And something powerful happens here. You start responding instead of reacting. When your nervous system is regulated, you don't get pulled into drama as easily. You don't explain yourself into exhaustion. You don't need to win every conversation. You become grounded. Staying home teaches you that calm is not laziness. It's strength. It's the strength to pause, to choose wisely, to protect your energy without apology. And the more you practice this calm, the less tolerance you have for environments that demand chaos to feel alive. This is how peace becomes your baseline, not because the world got quieter, but because you did. Staying home reshapes how you handle conflict. When you're constantly out there, overstimulated and depleted, everything feels personal. Every comment hits harder. Every disagreement feels like a threat. But when you stay home and give yourself space, your resilience returns. You stop meeting every challenge with defense. This is where you learn that not every message deserves a response, and not every invitation deserves a yes. Staying home gives you the pause that wisdom requires. Instead of reacting from wounded places, you respond from grounded ones. And that shift changes everything. You also begin to recognize emotional manipulation more clearly. When you're rested, you can see guilt for what it is. Pressure loses its urgency. Urgency loses its power. Staying home sharpens your boundaries because you're no longer negotiating from exhaustion. Some people will resist this version of you. They'll say you've changed, and they're right. You've changed because you stopped living in survival mode. You stopped being endlessly available. You stopped explaining your limits like they were flaws. Staying home doesn't make you disconnected. It makes you selective. You start choosing conversations that matter, people who listen, spaces that allow you to breathe, and when conflict does arise, you meet it with clarity instead of chaos. This is how you reclaim your power. Not by being louder, not by winning arguments, but by being so rooted in yourself that nothing outside you can knock you off center. Staying home is where you rebuild trust with your inner voice. Out there, you're constantly adjusting your instincts to match the room. You second guess what you feel. You override what you know. But at home, away from influence and interruption, your intuition gets louder, not dramatic, just clear. You start recognizing patterns you couldn't see before. Why certain people drain you. Why some paths never felt right, no matter how hard you tried. Staying home gives you the distance needed to see your life honestly without defending it. This is also where self-respect deepens. Not the loud kind that announces itself, the quiet kind that shows up in your choices. You stop forcing alignment with things that require you to betray yourself. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who benefit from you not having any. Staying home teaches you discernment, the difference between discomfort that leads to growth and discomfort that leads to harm. You learn that peace is not boring. It's earned. It's the result of countless small decisions to listen, to pause, to protect what matters. And here's the part no one tells you. The more you honor your inner voice, the harder it becomes to ignore it. You cannot know what you know. Staying home changes you because it returns authority back to where it belongs, inside you. From that place, your yes becomes meaningful. Your no becomes clean. And your life starts reflecting who you truly are, not who you were trying to be. Staying home prepares you for a different kind of courage, the courage to re-enter the world without losing yourself. This isn't about retreating forever. It's about returning differently. When you've spent time alone, when you've listened, rested, and healed, you stop needing the world to validate your existence. You go back out with clearer standards. You no longer chase environments that demand you fragment yourself. You choose spaces that respect your wholeness. And because of that, your presence becomes intentional, not habitual. Staying home teaches you that you don't need to be everywhere to be meaningful. You don't need constant exposure to be relevant. Depth comes from intention, not frequency. And when you live this way, your energy becomes rare and therefore powerful. You also begin to trust your timing. You stop rushing decisions out of fear. You stop forcing momentum. Staying home shows you that alignment cannot be hurried. What's meant for you doesn't require you to burn yourself out to reach it. and something surprising happens, your confidence quiets. It no longer needs approval or applause. It's rooted, steady, unshakable. You know who you are because you've met yourself in the quiet and survived it. Staying home doesn't shrink your life. It refines it. It removes the excess, so what truly matters can finally breathe. Staying home ultimately teaches you this truth. You were never meant to live at the pace of other people's expectations. You were meant to live in alignment with your own values, your own limits, your own truth. And alignment requires space. It requires silence. It requires the courage to step back when the world tells you to push forward. When you stay home, you stop mistaking noise for meaning. You stop confusing motion with progress. You realize that a calm life is not a small life. It's a deeply intentional one. A life where your energy is protected, where your yes is honest, where your no is respected, even if only by you at first. This is where self-trust becomes unbreakable, because you didn't find yourself in applause or approval. You found yourself in stillness. You learned that peace is not something you earn after exhaustion. It's something you choose before burnout. And when you finally step back out into the world, you do so whole, not desperate, not depleted, not proving. You show up rooted, aware, and grounded in who you are. So if you're staying home right now, let me say this clearly: you are not falling behind. You are coming back to yourself. And that is the bravest, wisest thing you can do. Ending statement: sometimes the most powerful move forward is staying home long enough to remember who you are.